Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Infinite Creative Podcast. My name is Sean.
And I'm Fitz, your co-host.
So before we jump into all the goodies, we always like to say, make sure to like and subscribe to this podcast. We need all the fans we can get. And I guess, today's topics, we're going to first check in with Fitz. He's going to talk a little bit about some gear stuff, about, when's some good times to buy gears, when's some bad times to buy gears, when's some good times to sell gears, and when's a good time to never sell anything and keep it all and hoard it into your collection of gear. But anyway, today we're also going to talk about a little topic that's near and dear to my heart that I think both me and Fitz both struggle with still to this day, which is, do you niche or do you not niche? Yeah. That is the question. But I guess, let's kick it off, man. Let's talk about gear.
Yeah, so it is September, and you maybe heard the news. New iPhone dropped, and the Queen too. So, But here's the thing. Every year, it's the same thing. It's September, and all the gear is dropping. We're talking iPhones, cameras, whatever it is. And people don't really think about it, but there is like a method to the madness. Basically, you would assume like, Christmas is around, and that's the reason why everybody's dropping the stuff. But another reason is September is the month with the most birthdays. What is very interesting to think about. Actually, also my birthday. So, for that reason alone, you should subscribe. But I basically followed all those products that are basically getting launched again, like the new iPhone 14th. And I kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit in the beginning. But what is your thought? Because you just bought, what was your Mac Studio?
Yeah, we both just bought new gear recently. So
how do you feel about that?
I feel okay about it. It's funny. Apple definitely sizzles out after that first month. You start to find problems and things, but that's interesting. So there's most birthdays in September. That's very interesting.
Yeah, it's a fun statistic, and basically, I think like 2 years or 3 years ago, I basically dabbled in stocks, and I'm like, okay, when is a good time to buy stocks? And I'm like, okay, masterminding, like if I buy before they release the new GoPro, then maybe the stock shoots up and I make all the money. That was like my thought process, thinking about GoPro. But it didn't really turn out because GoPro at the time was like having a bad launch. But that made me realize every year it's the same thing. It's the same time when the products are getting released, and there's basically a good time to buy. And this is like after September. If you buy in August, usually you buy old gear, and it's kind of like a bummer, I would say, because you buy something expecting like this will last me like for the next 2-3 years. And you realize, wait a minute, they just dropping new stuff.
That's true.
Yeah, and we both basically did the thing. Like I bought a MacBook Pro, and you bought like that studio thingy. I forgot, everything is called Mac whatever, I bought mine being already a little bit older, and it was not refurbished or anything. It was just an older model, and I just wanted to dabble with it. So I already knew there will be a new MacBook dropping in the next month, but I don't care. I don't want to have the top of the line. I basically went with the bottom of the barrel of the Pro versions, but So that is kind of like an interesting concept to think about when you're like buying gear. What time of the month is it actually? And most people don't give, you know what I mean? So it's interesting.
It is. I guess, you're saying that, we kind of got old gear. The new gear is being announced now, which makes sense, right? It's about to be the holidays. We're entering the holiday season. So, so September, October, that would be when you would launch all these new products. But argumentatively, doesn't that mean that they're the most expensive they'll ever be? So that's what we're kind of, bottom of the barrel type of guys. So we want those nice discounts. That's how you get us in the
I wouldn't describe us as bottom of the barrel guys, but we like a good bargain, I would say, or?
Okay, that's a better way to say it, for sure.
That brings me also to another fun fact. Like, I don't know if you followed it, but, my phone is a little bit older, and I'm like, should I buy the new iPhone, Rachel and me, like my wife, we thought about like, hey, let's get a contract together. So, saving some money and doing all those things, then you know when it's real, But basically like, I followed the launch of the iPhone and I realized, oh my God, you know what they do right now? They sell old chips as a new phone. Only when you buy like the Max version or the Pro version, however they call it right now, you get the new chip. If you buy the regular 14th, you get the version, like the chip version of last year. So it's old tech refurbished. I'm like, how you feel about that, Sean?
Oh, I mean that doesn't surprise me at all, really, right? That they would want to get rid of these old Intel chips, these old M1 version 1.0 chips. Yeah, it makes
I think it's the
sense.
A15 chip that they use in the smartphones, like nerd.
Yeah, nerd alert. I mean, obviously, I think it was really funny. I think the iPhone releases are always just so. Like, they almost know already that there's not much they're going to add to these things now, so it's just really funny that they, we get a new color, so now we got dark blue, I think is what it is, instead of dark green.
I don't even know.
Yeah.
I was trying to watch it and be like, what is the highlight? Maybe there's something new that I really, really need. And I'm like, but most likely it's going to be a little bit better camera, a little bit faster, but the old iPhone is already fast enough, so nobody really cares. And there's times where I forget what iPhone do I even have. I just know I have one, And that's sad.
Well, what's interesting, too, is in Apple land, you have your consumer market, and then you have your pro user market. And the iPhones are weird because it's kind of both markets get the iPhones. So it is funny that now they even have the pro iPhone, right? So it's just really, it's funny because you can definitely see that a lot of it is just about popularity, it being a new model, everyone knows that you have the newest model, so that's still obviously part of that. So I mean, it's funny when they announce new computers, Apple, I'm all over it. I'm watching it like the day of, I'm watching it live, but when they do the phones, I almost never watch it. I don't even, I'm like...
That's actually interesting. You know why? Because right now there's a weird transition time. I had that with this podcast. I'm downloading apps to get certain effects and getting my workflow, and it's shifting from the computer to the smartphone. It's slowly, you upload over your smartphone, use all those apps on the smartphone, but some of the tasks you still do on the computer, but then there's like some single apps that you could buy and you could do one part of your workflow, but then you have to go back and forward and back again. But I think like it's shifting to only smartphone, if you know what I mean. Can you see that? Or what is your opinion on that?
Only smartphone, I'm not sure.
Yeah, and you're like a little bit stuck on that. Oh, I work on a computer and I need the best of the best, And I'm like, oh, do you actually need now 8K, or do I just need like a really creative 1080 or 4K video that I could edit on my phone? I don't need a computer for that. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's for different processes, but I mean, I'm not against recording stuff on your phone. I'm recording this podcast on my phone, so it's a good way.
I'm not.
So you're a pro level. See, you're pro level. I'm bottom of the barrel guy, right? But
we're on the budget.
But it's still an iPhone that I'm using, right? It's just last year's model. But I think I think you're right. I think the idea of mobile devices is really interesting, right? Because that was kind of Steve Jobs' like entire concept of what the tablet was going to be and everything. He wanted to take away the computer from the desktop, and it was about you're bringing your work everywhere. And I think that's what Apple does that I do like, is that they do all of these like the AirDrop and the AirPlay,
the innovative stuff.
Yeah, and I think for the first time, I rented a car this last week, and I got to even experience Drive Play, which is really cool when it like knew that my iPhone. Drive Play? So it's it's kind of a newer thing with the Apple universe, but it's I think it just came out this year, but it like could detect. It was a Chevy car, so I think it's only certain makes and models, but it could detect that my iPhone was in the car, and it said, "Hey, do you want to allow AirPlay or Drive Play or whatever?" And then it put my screen up on the actual display of the car, which was really neat. So it was like I had my maps, and it showed my Spotify open, and it had messages. So it was kind of really cool. So, but there is so the phone's really funny because it is like that middle ground, right? It's like that hub between your office, your home, everything. So I think you're right when you are saying that like a phone in itself is almost, if you were to say like, hey, out of all the Apple devices, if you had to get rid of all of them except for one, I guess, yeah, the phone would be the one that you would want to keep in terms of it can do at least everything okay.
And I think it's getting better and better. But on that note, I want to have like a little quick survey. Everybody who's listening right now, do you watch this on a computer or on a phone? Just curious. Drop a comment down below. And if you follow creative, let me know what is your favorite app that you use in your creative process. That could be anything. I'm just curious. But yeah, I would say I kind of want to switch back to the whole like gear thing, because like the thing that brought me on that gear thing was not iPhone or Apple. It was Insta360. So I'm like in videography, and there were like cameras getting dropped. There's like lenses getting dropped, and I'm like, oh boy, I could spend now all the money. And basically, does it make sense to upgrade? And I kind of want to ask you now, Sean, when does it make sense for you to get an upgrade? Like, what are your requirements to shell out some money to like a new piece of gear or whatever it is? And you're like, I guess I really need that. What is your excuses you come up to justify the sale?
Well, yeah. Well, a little quick segue. I mean, your world is getting forced to upgrade, right? The idea of mirrorless, and no one's even making cameras with mirrors now. So in a way, you're kind of forced to upgrade. In a way, you can't keep the level. So the same thing happens on my level too, where like you have to upgrade at a certain point. They're just like, we don't even do this technology anymore. So I have a few videographer and photography friends that are going with this whole new mirrorless world that you're all being forced into. You almost have to do it.
Yeah, so here's an interesting fact, though. If you're a professional and somebody says you need to have this thing and you actually do it, you know that your old gear usually can still do the job, you know? Mm-hmm. It's just not a trending buzzword like mirrorless, because nobody really cares if it's mirrorless or not if it still records video, you know what I mean? And if the client thinks the video is great, you're good. But same with the design. Like, you could not use a Mac and do like your design in, I don't know, Canva or like some Windows GIMP, whatever, you know. Nobody would care if the design is good. But yeah, they want to have those brand words, I think.
So I guess for me, just since like a camera's still hardware technically, I guess I was thinking more that like who's going to repair mirror cameras, right? If everything goes mirrorless, your mirror camera breaks, you may be out of luck, right? I mean, at least eventually. Maybe not immediately, but like 2 years in the future, you may have a hard time getting your old cameras even repaired because everything's mirrorless now. So there may not be even, like Canon may not take in your mirrored camera and repair it. So I don't know.
The whole repair thing is a thing in itself. It will take forever and cost a lot, and consumerism, just buy new.
Right. So to get back to your question, when do I think I need to upgrade my stuff? I think it's when I start to. It's a great question. I mean, for me, it's really when I start to see a friction point in my process. If I see something is like not working quickly, or if I feel like I'm wasting time, or like for example, the reason I got my Mac Studio is I was finding things that were like labor intensive were just locking up my computer, and there'd be those 10-20 seconds of seeing the little spinning ball, and maybe it'd only be 10 to 20 seconds, but you multiply that at scale. I mean, yeah, we're talking like an hour a week that I'm wasting staring at something that's supposed to be loading. And that's gone mostly away. I wish I could say it went fully away. I still
Wait a minute, didn't you buy top of the line, not bottom of the barrel this time?
Right, I bought a $3,000 computer and still have already made it spin a few times. I've found that like my complex vector world is still too complex for even modern technology, so that's okay. But anyway, like, so for me it's always like when do I feel like something is in the way? When do I feel like I'm not moving as fast as I can? When do I feel my stamina getting less and less? But I see so much stuff out there that I almost wish I had more budget to try. Like I know there was this device a while ago that was all about live editing, and the idea of like when you have live music in production, it's all about these knobs. And I've saw that, and I still haven't tried that technology of like, well, could I have my little Photoshop board here with knobs that are already programmed to stuff? Like there's things like that, but I just haven't found like the need. Like you said, I can work around it, right? I don't like run into the fact, oh, I need a knob to do this. That's what's slowing me way down is the knob thing. So So it's like I need that proof a bit. Like I need like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, like clearly your way sucks, Sean. Like you need to just put out the money. Like look at this. Like this is clearly the way to go. And like one of the things I
Actually,
did a while ago was get an iPad, and that was one of the things where I was like using this Wacom tablet, this huge Wacom tablet that was just like I had a hard time putting it places. It was just a pain in the butt to unplug. So I was like, dude, just get an iPad. So you're just holding an iPad and you're just sitting there sketching on it, and you could just push it over, and that was big. But even that was a Black Friday deal. So I'm a very frugal guy a lot of the time. It's a lot of Black Fridays, Cyber Mondays, Amazon days. Yeah.
Yeah. On that note, like I kind of wanted to talk about me because, like, as a videographer, like you said, like gear is kind of important. You know, everybody judges you. Like, what is your setup like? You know, what gear you're gonna use, what brand, and you have one camera, you have two cameras, or you have more. You know, like because like if something breaks on the job, one camera ain't enough. You know. But yeah, basically for me, the thing that kind of sparked the whole idea about like speaking about gear was the Insta360 1X3 actually, and I have the 2. I'm like, whoa, this is cool. Bigger display. Let me actually show you. I have it right here. It's like a 360 camera, you know, all the gadgets, you know. And I think like when I buy gear, I go like, is this actually a new feature that I can offer? Less about like, is this top of the line quality? You know, like I want to dabble with 360 video. It's kind of cool with the VR headset, and now I can film everything in 360. Put some graphics in there, you know, maybe the quality is not as great as like filmed on the DSLR, but you get everything, you know. Low light is not that good. And I'm like, they dropped that thing and I'm like, is it actually really worth it? Because like the key differences were like instead of that tiny round screen here, you get a big square screen and you get a little bit less of noise and it still does all the other things. So I'm like, ooh. Should I even spend like $450 to have like a minor upgrade? And that's what kind of made me think about the iPhone. Like, should I even spend that money on a minor upgrade? You know? And I think like after you're like a little bit more experienced and you know about gear and that you don't really need top of the line, you just need like working gear that is like decent. You can save some money and make some money. You know what I mean? Like, put the gear to work instead of like finding an excuse.
And I think like it always goes to like which you kind of touched on is that you know you want to make money with this, right? So that's part of it too. Is I know when I buy stuff, I think you have to pay this off. Like, don't ever buy something you're never going to be able to pay off, right? So in this case, $450, you could probably make that back in like 1 or 2 projects. But like you said, there's the argument you could have done that with the old gear anyway. You know, so my argument is like, I mean, like all you described there was a little bit bigger screen, a little bit less noise.
Yeah.
That's probably not worth $450.
Yeah.
And
it makes sense if it's
later.
your first device, you know, like if you never dabbled in like 360 videography, it's maybe that's the right thing then to buy. But if you're like already a little bit like, oh, I have already a 360 camera, like, is it worth it? You know?
Yeah, no, like, yeah, exactly. So I mean, I'm running into that all the time too, where there's web design tools and things that I can buy that like maybe they make the process better and easier, but if I don't have something immediately ready to kind of pay for that, or at least in my head, because sometimes there's
like
that
a lot of money.
Yeah, kind of. Or like let's say like for me it's always a client project, right? So that's what always gets me using new technologies is I'll put them kind of on my back burner. And then I'll be like, oh, okay, there's this client that's coming up. He kind of wants something a little bit new or a little bit on the cutting edge. So maybe I can push this direction, and I won't do it just to buy this. So don't get me wrong. I'm not like taking advantage of clients to buy the gear I want, but I do that's kind of what I'll do. Is like it's like right now I don't have any brand new projects. Like I'm just in the middle of a few of them. Right now, I'm probably not looking at new web design tools. I'm not looking at new things. But if there was something that's like going to jump off in another month, I'd be like, well, hey, let's save some of these things because when this kicks off, I can build that into that price. I do that so many times where that first time I do the subscription is directly out of something that's being paid for immediately. And so then it doesn't feel as bad because, like it's baked into this process. So it's... But one thing that I always do have to stop myself with the Apple reveals and other things and just, you know, the constant barrage of discount emails I get is just out of the blue buying something. Like, this is the time, we got a discount, 20% this week only.
This is actually a good one, actually. Like, I got an email for the Insert 361 X Go free. So I was on the email list. I'm like, it was not even the social media. It basically, the email list still works to this day. And I'm like, I thought like email is dead, but apparently it's not that. And I'm like pushed away like building my email list. And I'm like, goddamn. That email list basically made me watch some influencers double checking if it's worth to upgrade. And I'm like, they got me.
Yeah. I'm constantly.
You got an email list, my dude?
I do actually, my dude, but it's very small. So if you guys want to hop on it, go to SeanCraigCreative.com. It's at the bottom of the page. You can sign up to my newsletter list. That has not been very active, but someday it will be. Someday, yeah, the bottom of the barrel. Sign up for the bottom of the barrel newsletter. But yeah, you know, it's funny because there's so many marketing plans that I help with on clients that I bring up newsletters and they're like, what, really? And I'm like, yeah, you'd be surprised because if they signed up for it, it's only if it's people that love your product. But man, if you get a list, 100 people that love your product, you send out those emails, you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised how well they work. Yeah. So in this case, exactly, look, we're talking about it in our podcast and everything. So this one email, I know, good job, good marketing.
Yeah, so that gives us also things to do, setting up an email list for the Infinite Podcast. But anyhow, that alone is like sparking again so many topics in my head, but I wanted to go back right next to the next topic, so hit that thing here and rate it 5 stars on Spotify. But Sean, you were talking about niching, and we were talking about like researching for tools, and that basically means if you do research, you niche down. So what is the problem with the niche again for you? Because I'm usually the guy with what is my niche and what should I do?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's something that all of us creatives, we all deal with. I'm sorry, I'm just pulling up a couple things that'll be shown here in a second. But, you know, there's a lot of talk in the world, I think, right now, just because it's easier now to do things, to do multiple things and to learn new things. Yeah. And so with that being said, you know, I know you've ran into young creatives, and I know I have, where they're very optimistic, they're bright-eyed, they're bushy-tailed, that I can do things, I can learn things, nothing will stop me.
What is good.
You know? Which is great. I mean, like, and so everything I'm going to say, I'm not poo-pooing that. But
till you fall on your face.
And you are going to fall on your face. I mean, so what is interesting with these people, though, is they either are successful or they're not. And when they're successful, it's amazing. It's absolutely cool to see them achieve so many different things in so many places and how those things feed into each other. But more commonly, you run into people that aren't really good at any of the things, and then once that thing starts to challenge them, they fall flat on their face. They switch to the next thing. It seems like so they're afraid of the grind. The grind actually scares them. And they jump to the next thing, because it's almost easier to start a new thing than it is to grind through something. It's almost easier to be an alien in a strange world than it is to be in a world you know and grind it out.
Yeah, so, you're 100% on that one.
So it's very interesting. So I'm going to share my screen here in a second. So I'm going to kind of base these around these 2 books I've been reading. Okay. Let me get this.
So on that note, though, do you think like you're very niche down, or you're not niche down enough?
Well, yeah,
or you're thinking like you want to go more wide. What is your problem? Just to be a little bit more personal.
Yeah. So before we even kind of jump into so there's 2 books I will be kind of talking about a little bit here. But yes, I mean to kind of give where my mind is on all of this, where I am, is that I have niched, but I could niche a lot more. I think it's like I've niched, but I haven't done a great job of niching, and so. I think the one thing that I'm going to kind of talk about in one of these books is the idea of micro niching. So like you feel like you've already niched, but you live in a time now where you can actually go even deeper, and that's something I haven't done. I haven't gotten that deep and figured out what is that exact problem, what is that exact product, what's that exact service I'm trying to do. I definitely still leave it more open and big picture, but I've met a couple people, and I know you have, that are very micro niche. They're like, I do this exact thing for this exact audience, and that's
and they
all
know
they put
all
their
the
energy
tools
into.
that could be helpful for that audience.
Yeah,
Where
exactly.
a generalist is like, they maybe know one or two tools, but the one niche expert in that area would maybe name 20 items, and find the perfect solution for that thing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's definitely something that I see all the time. So I'm just going to quickly show the two books. I think these are two books that I would suggest anyone watching you should get. And so the first one I'm going to share here is Refuse to Choose. This is a great book that's been around for a while, but I'm rereading it. I read it a while back when it first came out, but it's all about how do you have all these interests and passions, and then how do you make that into a career? Okay, so that's one book. So Barbara Sher, she's great. She's essentially taking the side of don't limit yourself, don't say that you have to be one thing, and don't listen to people that tell you have to only be one thing. And then on the other end, very quickly, the other end is a newer book by Kevin Harington. He's a great marketing mind in the world, and he really talks about what's going to make you the key person in your industry. And his main point that he very quickly says in this book is that you need to stop wasting your time on all the things you're not good at, and trying to be good at the things that you're not good at. And you really need to get good at what is the one thing that you are amazing at, and how deep can you get that. And so so with that, these are kind of the two books I'm focusing on when I'm kind of talking about this, because there's almost these two different paths in these books, but I actually think there's like a way to meet in the middle here. But yeah, before we kind of dive in, I actually wanted to know you as well. Like, how do you feel about your niche? Like, where are you? Where are you in this?
So for me, it's like I spent a lot of time when I came to the US with starting to learn a business, and then the idea was like, if I could make money with the internet, I could be anywhere, that gives you great freedom, you can travel and whatever, Then I was like experimenting with websites, thenewforeigner.com, had the idea, started the blog at a time where I was like freshly in the US, basically 1 or 2 years in, and I'm like, I can't write for shit, And that is the problem. And I'm like, okay, that made me motivated to focus on video, because I kind of did video all the time since then, I'm like a niche down on video, and I know I'm ADHD, and I'm getting very energized about trying new things, So my problem is like the niche thing. And after I learned spending a lot of time with how to make money with the internet, I'm like, I need to find a niche so I can create content around that niche and monetize that niche, because it's really easy to grow on the internet if you're just generating focus and generating focus on the niche, and you're just dominating that niche with content. What is really easy to do nowadays, but finding a niche and being passionate about cucumber jars, for example, is really hard.
Cucumber jars, oh man.
So that's really, really niche down. But nowadays, the internet is so far advanced right now, and the expertise and the creatives and influencers, you can pick any niche, and there's thousands of influencers, So you have to be so niche down that it's not any more fun. And I'm like, oh, and I'm getting with my ADHD so demotivated about for example, Tempa's Life, a friend of mine. He does vlogs about food reviews. And I'm like, that's a fun thing I liked doing 2 years ago. And now I'm like, I couldn't do it. I'm like, there's no fun in it anymore. But if you niche it down, there's money to be made. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I feel like I need a niche, but I'm like, my ADHD, and I'm getting worn out by the niche. So I'm like,
yeah. Well, it almost sounds like you haven't found the niche then, I guess, would almost be my argument to that. I mean,
so here's the thing, though. After there was that self-finding, Find Your Inner Why. It's also a really interesting book or whatever. I think it's by Rob, whatever. I forgot the name. He has a TED Talk. Basically, he's like, you need to find your why, and that will motivate you to do whatever you're going to do. I basically got lost in that circle of finding myself. Didn't go anywhere, produced less content, produced less work, and basically just worried about stuff I shouldn't worry about. And then I made click, I should just need to do stuff. Whatever at the moment is the stuff that I feel like doing is maybe the thing I should do. And if I have a moment and feel like strategizing, I can do that and just strategize and do the stuff I think I should do. And if I get confused and I'm chasing my own tail, I should just put in the work. What is my way right now doing stuff? What is like not optimal? Because it would be better if it would be doing one thing and one thing only, you know? But I don't want to think because I get confused.
Well, yeah, no. Well, and I love everything you just said. I mean, I think what you're saying is so common, right? The idea of I don't feel like I'm doing enough, so that means I need to do more of the stuff that I don't enjoy in a way. It's like this weird, you're tricking your mind into thinking that you need to do stuff that you don't enjoy because it's your fault that you don't enjoy it in a weird way. I kind of run into the same thing, right? Like I find myself, especially in web design, because I didn't grow up wanting to be a web developer by any means. So I have to stop myself all the time because I'm just like, do you really enjoy this? Like you're diving even deeper into this thing, and is this now too far? Have you now gone too far where now your eyes are glazing over? You're not even really you're not passionate about it, and that's the thing. I think what you're talking about how it gets exhausting, because it's when you're passionate about something, you're like, I could work all night, I could work every day, I don't care, I'll get it done. But like when you don't have that, when you like lose that kind of love for it, it's like, you know, you're faking it. Then you're just kind of trying to.
But here's the thing. So that what you're saying is like you gotta love your work, kind of sorta, and it's like nothing in life you will really love. You know, you have your seasons, you love it for a moment, but if you don't put the maintenance and the work in the times where you don't like it, you will not get that second season of love, you know, where like it goes up and down. Sometimes you love your freelance work and your web development and whatever, but if you don't do the maintenance work in the times where you hate it, you will fall off and you're declining. So it's like it's so weird to what is the right answer, and I feel like there is none, kind of. And I got like burned trying to find the answer. You know what I mean? So now I'm like, I don't want to think about it. I want to just do. You know?
Yeah. Well, I think it's like, it's like and it always goes back to, and I find this a lot of the time with myself, is that you can't believe in the process more than you believe in yourself, type of thing. So you have to believe in your love for it and where do you come from, and you have to get back to being okay. Because you're right, like any job, like as a web designer, as a graphic designer, there's times that are not perfect. There's times where I'm not having a great time, or I feel like I've kind of failed in a way. And it's not about not having those times. It's always about getting it back to being okay. It's about equanimity, really, in terms of how are you going to get back to okay in what you do. And if you start to find you can't get back to okay, you can't get it back to an okay place, because it's okay if you had a bad project, but let's say then you can't get the next project going, or then like you can't even look at a video about a new technique, then that's starting to show that you've fallen out of love. And that's a very important thing, I think, to distinguish, is like, I used to love this, now I don't. You know, is this a permanent change? And maybe it is. I think what gets scary, which I think you've talked about, is that happening multiple times, falling completely out of love with something, and then shifting gears to something else, and then falling out of love with that thing, and then shifting gears again. Yeah. And before you know it, you kind of don't feel like you've ever been in love. You start to wonder, like, well, what the hell, was there ever anything that I was really passionate about? And that can be scary. I've kind of been there too a bit.
Yeah, so here's also like a thing, like there's like two thoughts that I have at the moment about this. Because like sometimes, you know, when something is not working, you should jump ship to a better market, you know, because you will have way more success if you're in the right market. You know, you can be a shitty entrepreneurial and you're in the right market, you make money just because you're the only one doing it. But if you're in a market that is like really satisfied, and it's really hard to be like a good entrepreneurial in that field, freelancer. It's kind of the same thing, you know, you're figuring out a business, running a business for yourself. But it's like, it makes everything harder. And at what point you have to decide, is this now the right market or the wrong market, you know? But the second part of that idea was like, my friend Jonathan, you know, the videographer, a friend of mine, was like for a very long time in a niche, and it was like fire performance and dancers. And they are particularly broke, you know, but he made himself like a name in the industry. If you're just like getting to know them, there's not many ways how to monetize a thing that is like in a broke-ish, performer art area, but the longer you're in that scene, the more ways you figure out how to monetize it, who has the money, what goes, what doesn't go. But if you don't put the time in, you don't figure that out. So where is that, like being in the right market and knowing, did I know enough in this market, or do I just need just one more thing to figure all those things out, like putting the extra time in?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it depends on the goals, right? It depends on, are you here to have fun and make good things, or are you here to make money? It goes back to that to a degree, right? Because it's really important to define what success is too. I mean, I run into so many creatives where they haven't really told me, is it about the money or is it about making something? And I think if you don't have that, then you're never hitting it. Then you're never hitting the okay part. I mean, you and I both know people that won't go freelance because they feel like they haven't hit that mark yet, or they don't feel like they're ready yet. But you have to define what that is. You do have to create, what is that goal line then? When do you know that you're doing okay? When is this good for you? Because if you like fire dancing and you love just that world, then just shooting something that looks awesome should be enough, right? But if you're walking away from that because you didn't make enough money, then I think you need to then think about, maybe I care more about making money through video than doing this particular thing with video. So one of the things that, like, in Refuse to Choose, so that first book I kind of showed there quickly, is she talks about scanners and how there's scanners in all walks of life. And scanners are people that we like to scan through things. We see that something's good and we like to put our hands into it. And so that in itself is not a bad thing at all, to go ahead and do, to scan certain things and to kind of only pass through certain hobbies and things like that. It's not a bad thing at all. In fact, it's actually a good thing, that you're willing to take on new tasks and willing to learn new things. Now the thing that I would say within jumping between all the different things, is find the connective tissue, because there always is something that's connecting. If you're doing maybe different things, maybe you're doing, like in your world, let's say it's more like maybe you're doing real estate photography, maybe you're doing 360 stuff on the side, and then maybe on the weekends you're doing like fire dancers and things like that.
Yeah. But the cornerstone is still the video,
Exactly. Maybe it's the video, maybe it's the storytelling, maybe it's the visuals on screen, So it's like you have to define what's that thing that's holding it all together. But with that being said, I think we live in a very beautiful time, right? It's so easy now to start a company or start a new kind of thing than it ever has been before. It's like, it's dumb cheap to start a company now. So why should you limit yourself, right? Why should you only do this one thing when it's a very cheap gamble to start 10 different things? Just like us, we started a podcast with very little to no budget, because what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, true. Nowadays, everything's like relatively cheap. We're not the only people like having a podcast, like we're competing in a very saturated market. And the only things how you can make a difference is like be consistent, put more work out than them, and maybe have better topics and be better. But that is also like a process, and it's like, how do we keep the motivation up, in general? But I feel like for me, it's like, this is video, so I'm like, this is a good learning experience, and there's ways how I will be monetizing that later on after we figured out our kinks,
Right, and it's not like we were, sitting around having boring conversations and being like, oh yeah, let's start a podcast. No, I mean, the podcast started from our conversations, and we enjoy these conversations, and it's good for us even just to even catch up every week and have this kind of thing to discuss stuff of the week. So at the end of the day, that's the equanimity. That's where we come back to, right? We can get 5 million views or 10 views, but we still have these conversations.
Yeah, on that point though, because like we're talking about niching down, let's talk about freelancing. Like, if you have to pick a niche in freelancing, what do you think is the most paying niche, or what is the most underrated freelancing job? Because like there's like common freelance jobs like web designer, videographer. There's a couple, but I don't know which one is the best. The grass is always green on the other side, but throw some out there. I'm kind of curious right now. And if you listen to this, let me know what you're working.
Yeah. Honestly, yeah. And send us comments about like, what are you doing? What do you have a weird niche? Have you thought of a weird niche? What's interesting. So in the Key Person of Influence, the second book I showed there, it's very interesting because he discusses the idea of micro niching and the idea of that all starts with a need, right? Every niche starts with a need. Someone needs something. Someone needs some type of content out there, right? And so for us, let's just take this podcast, right? This podcast's target audience is probably other creatives, maybe other young professionals that just need to hear
struggling
kind of another
freelancers, fresh out of school.
yeah, fresh out of school, struggling freelancers, bottom of the barrel. There we go. And so that's
I'm just kidding, guys.
But how do we serve those people, right? So then that's where the micro niche comes in, where maybe we're a podcast that caters to the struggle of struggling creatives, and that's our micro niche. And so
I want to give some advice to those struggling people, those freelancers. You were mentioning 2 books, and I had it in my mind, and I wanted to say it, but I didn't do it. And now we were explaining our niche. If you're a struggling freelancer and you don't want to buy that book, what Sean just showed on the screen for $6.99 as an ebook or for $12, go sign up with your library. Your library will give you a card. With that card, you can go onto Hoopla and listen to audiobooks for free. It is a cheat code. Libraries are a cheat code. You get free books. It's crazy. I barely buy books, but the library, you get probably those 2 books for free with a library card.
It's true. Yes, that's a good shout out. That's a good pro tip right there.
Yeah, that's very helpful for our free creatives here, or not free, but freelancing creatives. I mean, so subscribe.
Come on, we paid you. You pay us now. So yeah. To get back to your question, what would be my advice to someone? Where is the fruit? The fruit is get as close to something as humanly possible. So, for example, like I play Dungeons and Dragons with a group here in town. And guess how many like quality Apple apps there are in creating a character for D&D? Pretty much 0. I mean, in terms of well-designed apps, they're garbage on Mac. There's like none. There's a whole vacuum. So there's a micro niche right there. I'm an app developer that only works on Dungeons and Dragons games and tools. So that's that right there. And you could just start a channel on that, the graphic designer of D&D, and that could be your entire channel right there. So if you want to know where the fruit is, it's getting as dorky and as close to it as humanly possible. It's, as someone as a big picture guy like me, I have a really hard time with it, where I don't have the we only talk logos and branding channel. I don't have the we only talk web design. We only talk WordPress. And I could have like 5 channels of like, here's my WordPress talk of the week. I'm going to talk only about WordPress, and I don't. I'm a big
sites apart and being like, It is, but that brings us back to the passion about the niche. What is like the hardest part, I think. And I feel like you said like it has to be like fun, you gotta love it. I'm just like, on the one side, I kind of want to disagree, because like if you want to have just fun and love something, video games, you will be satisfied the whole time. You will have the most fun in your lifetime till you run out of money and you're on the streets, kind of. You know what I mean?
Well, one's passive, one's engaged, right? You're just like, playing a video game, I don't view that as a creative, there's creativity involved, sure, but like just playing a video game is a very passive thing where you're just taking in stuff. That would be like me being like, I love walking in art galleries. Active. I mean, I can't make a career out of walking through art galleries either. So it's like, it's the being engaged. So if you said, you like creating video games, or you're really interested in creating stories like they are in video games, like that's something there. I mean, the video game storytelling aspect, that's a niche. And then you could get even bigger. I'm a storytelling narrative expert on fantasy role-playing games in space. Boom, micro niche.
Yeah.
So
what I was like trying to say was like, it doesn't have to be just fun. That's what I'm saying. You got to work still.
Yes and no. I mean, I say if it's early on, it should be fun. If this is step 1, it better be fun, because if it's not now, boy, you best get ready once you get kicked off that horse. Then it's going to be really not fun. So it's like falling in love, right? You better have that lusty talk that first date. I mean, if you're not sitting there looking at each other across the table, just thinking of how you're going to ask to kiss each other, then wait for 2 years from now when you're sick of each other. So it's
so here's the arranged marriage guy.
So we're changing this whole thing to love advice with Sean. But no, like, seriously though, it's like you've got to be in love at the beginning. I disagree. If, like, you're coming into it like, man, this really sucks. I'm not enjoying this, but man, if I just stick with this for 10 years, I'm really gonna love it. Like, no, you're not. You're gonna be dead within a year. They're gonna find you under your computer you pulled on top of yourself, and you're gonna be dead.
You know, I feel like there's both ways, you know, have a way there. And, you know, like, your way is more like you got to love it and you got to enjoy it. And I feel like I have the more like, yeah, you got to put in the work, and I'm the lazy guy, though. You know what I mean? Like, I always felt like that Sean wants to, like, oh, do I really love that? You know, and just like, I feel like I should not love it and just do it kind of more. Because, yeah. I
mean, I don't know. If I was going after stuff I didn't love, man, I'd be making a lot more money doing a lot boring stuff than I'm doing now. So, I mean, for me, it's always been about love. I wouldn't be talking about design if it wasn't. I mean,
so romantic.
No, I am a romantic. So, you know, so I would say no. You've got to love it. You definitely do. I mean, we can disagree there. I think it's more you got to love it at the beginning, but you have to love it so much that you're not afraid of the work. The work needs to be just like, whatever. And if things go wrong, you should at least be able to come back and be like, at least I'm making cool stuff. Like, there's been so many times in my career it sucked so bad, and people like hated what I did, and I hated what I did. But I was able to at least come back and be like, you know what though, I made cool stuff. That's what I wanted. So that's pretty cool. You know.
Yeah, I think like also like that goes kind of back to mental health. Like where I'm like let's say freelancing as an arranged work, arranged marriage kind of sort of situation. You know, you pick something, you make it work, and then you grow it, and you fall in love with it because you learn to love all the little kinks, you know, and that's what the arranged marriage kind of is. Like, you're forced in a situation, you got to do it because, like, you got to pay bills, you know, and then you fall in love with it because, like, you figure it out, oh, this ain't bad, you know, and oh, I kind of actually like this process, you know, and you're right, like, the romantic couple is still a thing, you know, and in the end, like, it's like relationships, like, both have a potential to make it till like golden anniversary or whatever, or till death. But either way, you could get like it, broken up too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think that happens too, right? The breakup that does happen. I think that's being fair too. Is like, let's say you get 5-10 years down the road, and you're like, you know what? I did love this. Now I don't love this, and being honest about that and leaving, because I feel like that's the saddest thing that I see when I see it, not just in the creative world, but anywhere. Even when you go to a restaurant or something, you know, you see someone that's working and they hate what they're doing, so they're doing a worse job because of it. They just do. People just tend to, if they don't like what they're doing a bad job, and then they're not doing themselves any good by wasting their days just half-assing it and whatever. You know, that's when you know you're in a bad place. When it starts to change you, when you start to be just this schmuck because you don't want to do anything. You just want to, you just stupid schmuck. And, you know, and that's not serving you. It's not serving anywhere else, you know, and because there's people that
reality is like, you still need money. So those poor people, they maybe don't have a choice, Sean. Just saying.
And I would say they do. That's the saddest thing is it's the limited.
The streets.
I've been in the streets. I've been in the food bank line. So what I would say to that is that, you know, they just don't see that they could do more. They see the things they love, and they're told,
believe in themselves or whatever.
Yeah, and they're taught that way. They're taught, you know, I see it as early as high school, middle school counselors being like, that's just unreasonable. And instead of like, you know, and some of them are unreasonable, right? Like, you know, you're in remedial science and you want to be an astronaut. I'm sorry, it ain't going to happen. However, you could take that love of space and science for this person that's not good at it and still translate that to something. He could still have his YouTube, you know, Space and Science for Idiots. You know, he could still do that. But instead they're like, just give it up. You need to like give up these things, put them away in a drawer, and you need to go work at the dealership or something. And it's and even if you do, that's okay. But have a goal, have an exit strategy. If you're not fully in love with what you do, and if you are, that's okay. Like, stay where you are if you're happy. But if you're not, like, this should only always be a stepping stone to what you like. It should always be a stepping stone to the good stuff. So So what I would say too is like so you do need to niche, and I would say micro niche. And what I would further say is do a lot of micro niches. It's so cheap now to have micro niches, right? Like we're kind of good examples, right? Like you do these bike review things, you do the 3D printing stuff, you do videography for a multitude of stuff.
But what do I focus now on? You know, and that is like the thing. Like I should focus even more because like YouTube is so big.
Well, then what I would say then is what's the connective tissue to all your micro niches, right? What are the common things in the Venn diagram, right? 3D printing, bike reviews, this and that, event photography, and you know what's the thing in the middle? And that's what you should be putting all your time and eggs into that basket, because that feeds it all. Then that's the source of it all. So for me, it's like I'm always going to be doing visual design in some capacity. It's like it's either animation, vector design, layout design, painting, but it's always visual. So as long as I keep those going and I keep keeping my eyes on new work and new art, that's feeding kind of all the systems. So
on that note, now you said something. I sent you a text. Do you remember the art competition? What were your thoughts on that? And can you please explain what I sent you with the thing where the guy won like an art contest with AI and everybody's upset that he used it?
I know. I'm surprised we didn't talk about this on the last episode, even when it was still fresh. But
later.
Yeah, did it? So yes, because that's my home state. That was the Colorado State Fair, y'all, and. Yeah, it's so it's this is a little bit of an aside from niches, but this guy essentially is he created a digital painting using AI, something like MidJourney, or I don't know which one he used, maybe Dolly or something, and he had to keep refining it, so which does take time. It sounds like he went through about 500 different possibilities before he settled on one, and then he still had to go in and touch things up, is what he kind of had said. But it definitely brought up the whole argument of, is he still an artist, though, if he used these other things? What's your thoughts? Do you think he's still an artist? Do you think he deserves to win?
So here's the thing, though. Like, we had an episode 10, and you actually named the episode perfectly. AI composer. He was an AI composer. So he was the designer who picked the art, and that is his new job. So I feel like this is maybe a thing we should dabble in, because, like, it's unlikely that we are creating the art, but we are composing the art, because like already we are at a point where we're using like Photoshop, masking tools. We don't create the mask. AI is making the mask for us that it looks like perfect. Like if you're like, you hide a spot in the background, for example, and you want to just like having a little dot covered, you just mask over it, and it looks great, better than we could do, maybe depending on how skilled you are. But this just goes down that road where it's like, yeah, we're using tools that uses AI, that uses like, we don't draw those things anymore. We use the computer. At this point in time, we're already going into a composer phase, basically, where more and more is just composing. What do I like? What style do I like? What style of fonts do I like in my AI word overlay kind of sort of thing, for subtitles.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting that you kind of jumped a little bit off the rails here in the middle of the niche talking. No, and it's actually okay, because I feel like we can kind of still, because is that still a niche? Like, when does the niches get broken, right? Like, I'm a fantasy
would you say
painter.
He's now an artist for being just a composer? That is like my point there.
So what would his niche be, I guess, if you had to define it, right? Is his niche then creating fantasy art, and that's it, and then everything else is a tool, right? MidJourney is a tool, a paintbrush is a tool, because that's essentially what these AI things are. Because even in this case, I thought it was interesting that he didn't just have MidJourney pop something out and he put that in. I don't know what he did, but he did say he edited what MidJourney gave him. So there was still some artisticness to it. He touched it somehow. He had his fingerprints on it somehow.
Yeah, so here's my description on that, what he did. So he basically generated like a Star Wars themed futuristic oil painting where you see like planets in the background and see like the novel dynasty like in front of it, like looking at that, and it was really skillful. Our friend actually Trevor Creative, he did also experiment with his photography with an oil painting AI interpretation of his art. So he took a photo, uploaded it to that thing, and the pictures are beautiful. Like it basically transformed his pictures into an oil painting with his color theme. I was like, dang, he experimenting with that, you know? And I feel like this is like, I think we still need to be considered like an artist for doing the composing, because like you have to have good taste, you know?
Right. Well, it's like the vision, right? It's like saying Peter Jackson isn't an artist, where no, he is. He had a vision, and he had to get all these things together to make that vision a thing. So really, it's like I would argue. You'd maybe think I would say no, this guy's not an artist, but I would say he is. I would say he is. Even using MidJourney, he's still an artist. He had a vision.
Was it very creative for doing?
Yeah, very creative. Sure. I mean.
Most artists didn't, you know, they have to, you know, they're just like, oh, can I do this? No, he was like, oh, whatever, I'm doing art, I'm doing what I want, you know, was pretty baller, to be honest. He even wrote it in the title description, so they couldn't be mad, but the jury had no idea what MidJourney is. They're like, oh, buzzword, great.
Right, I think that's actually a very interesting point, right? Because if he would have hit it, we would all been like, why did you hide it and say you did it? Now that's wrong. However, since he credited MidJourney, and it's just funny because the people didn't know what it was. That's really funny. So they allowed it to happen.
Very creative. You know, I like it. I'm like, kudos to him.
So what's interesting right now, because this kind of brings something up, especially when I talk about the niches stuff, is that there's tools, and tools are always being defined and thrown away, and new tools are coming out, and you're seeing this with this guy winning, like, just him being a little bit on the front end curve of this, which in 5 years, MidJourney, everyone will know about it. It's not going to be new by any means in 5 years, but he's a little bit on the front edge of it, and he won because of it, and now his name was a national thing on CNN just because he won this thing. So even
now
his relevance,
he is the AI composer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he is the AI composer, and so it's, I don't know, it's interesting. So like, you know, so to kind of tie it with the niching is like, niche, but don't niche based on a tool. I think if this was 1800s, I would say your niche is painting. It still could be, but not painting with a paintbrush. Like don't get stuck on the paintbrush, or get stuck on the digital Wacom tablet, or on the iPad, or on the MidJourney for that matter. There may be stuff, even technologically wise, it's past MidJourney and DALL-E. It's going to be interesting. Does this get to a place where we all have our own creative teams of AI, right? Like I got my own copywriter over here. I got my own visual artist. Yeah.
There's like, especially in logo design, there's like statistics. What logo will be how likely approved by what type of population, education, you know, there's like percentages. The more data you have, the more you can be like, oh yeah, they don't like red, for example. Just like there's like that amount of percentage that they will disagree with that. If you feed enough data, you will know what type of population will like what, you know? So you need an AI composer for the AI. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like having an AI composer so that they compose the right art styles for whatever you would like. Because they know your demographic, and they would just like throw stuff at you that you just adore.
It's just we have a really funny idea for just like a funny show, even, right? Like if we just like we just had our own design agency that had this bureaucracy of AI under it, right? So we're like meeting with the lead creative director who's AI, and then we show a scene with him. He's talking to the other AI, and it's just kind of funny. Like we just have this whole thing of robots running under us. And it's scary. I mean, I can't lie to you. Every time we talk about this stuff, I can't help but get a little scared. Like, oh, that doesn't sound like there's many jobs for humans left, does there? I mean, so I don't know. It gets scary. I mean, so with the idea of niching, I think it's super important now. I think you have to niche on a big level. Do you like creating stories? Do you like making things? Do you like making stuff easier for people? Or do you just like getting into the details and fixing problems? Like that's your big niche, and then get into those micro niches. But then no matter what we're talking about in terms of niche, the tools are just tools. And I would say, you know, people talk about being agnostic in religion. I say being agnostic with tools. Okay, don't pray to your Lord and Savior the laptop. Don't pray to your Lord and Savior the 360 camera. Like these are
Premiere Pro. Don't crash.
Premiere Pro. and we don't talk about those Final Cut people. We don't talk about them. But, so it's like, they're just tools. They're all just tools. They're superfluous. They may disappear. They may get better. They may get more expensive, but they're just tools. And so it comes back to you. That's the only thing that makes you better than MidJourney. Isn't the brush strokes? It isn't how quick you can do it. It's going to be.
It's also like how you do it. It's like there's a whole science to everything. Like you learn a new tool, you got to learn the tool, but you got to spend some time.
And the why that you do it. A lot of artists understand this. The why is very important because while MidJourney may be able to be like you said, Star Wars and Oriental. Oh, here we go. Where like having the why be even bigger than that. Be like that's where you could be better than MidJourney. Is that like MidJourney's not going to have that crazy out of nowhere idea. It's going to follow the data. So, and sometimes the most beautiful stuff is what breaks the data.
What does the jury like?
Exactly. So it's
just doing some research on the jury. Like, what did they made win?
I know, right?
The last couple of years, Can
you imagine? And there's gonna be MidJourney for that. I mean, I can't if you're a criminal,
you just combine like the 4 last winners and make your art style out of that, and they probably will dig it.
Don't even pretend that there isn't some high-level law firm in the world right now that's right now probably has stuff that researches the faces of the jury people and is like, okay, so you need to wear a blue tie on this day and make sure to talk about your grandma at this point. That's probably already happening, this manipulating of us. We're all just data, and we've collected data now for the last 30, 40 years in such a great way that it's like we've created this weird brain, right? This AI brain.
Here's a fun thing, just a random side fact. Saw a TikTok and things that should be illegal to know. And basically the TikTok was about figure out in what fraternity the judge was in and then get a lawyer with the same fraternity. And I was just like, what? I'm just that would work because favoritism, Obviously, if you pick the right lawyer, then you're most likely to win. And the other team is like, well, he doesn't want to have his buddy lose, Well,
it's true. I mean, we do live in this weird time where it's easy to dig data up on everyone too. So you could really manipulate people too. I mean, you can go through someone's LinkedIn and know what jobs they had and see, oh, we only worked there for 6 months. So if I bring that up, maybe that's going to trip them up and things so there is this weird amount of data on you that, I think it's, who knows, even on a level, those judges could have been manipulated on that art contest, right? He could have looked up who's the judges and even that in a weird way, put that into MidJourney, took each piece from each of their portfolios and put it into MidJourney and created this. That would have been really funny if he actually took the judges' pieces of art and combined this uber piece of art. And then they were like, that's great. And he'd be like, yeah, of course, because it's your art. Very weird, man. It's very weird. Yeah, we should do some MidJourney stuff. We should play. Is that free? Is there any of these things open source? Dolly?
I'm not 100%. Pull it up. Let's do it on the screen. Type in MidJourney. Pull it up on the screen. Let's see if it's free. Because the one thing is if you don't adapt early, you're too late. And just write in your bio, AI composer, web designer. Man, that stuff slaps.
Mm-hmm. Well, it says we could join the beta, so I'm going to join the beta.
It's beta?
I think we all... Yeah, we have to join via Discord. But we can join. It seems like it's free.
You can't make that up. Oh.
I know.
The internet was bad for a second. But I think we got an hour.
Yeah, I think we could cut it here. I think maybe that's our homework for this week. Let's both look up MidJourney, Dolly. Let's go play. We've talked about it in a few episodes. I think... what should the prompt be, you think? Should be a coffee cup? Should be the coffee cup design? That should be the MidJourney?
Yeah. Make some merch. You throw your art into MidJourney and see what happens, and make a combine and then put some cups in there that you like as a design,
All right, well, we'll do that. We'll show that this next week. We'll both go out, do our own. You do one as well. I'll do an AI, and we'll see which AI wins in our cup design.
Yeah, first I have to sign up, though. But so thanks for watching the podcast. Subscribe, let a comment down below, and let me know, do you think it's being a freelance AI composer the next step of the journey for us?
And then, yeah, and let us know, is there any niches or micro niches that you think that, deserve some talking about, right? Is there something out there that interests you as a niche? And yeah,
AI in itself is already, like, you can niche down what is better. DALL-E is MidJourney, and there's like billions of companies now. You got it,
He's stuck. He's stuck on this AI thing, guys. We're gonna have to talk about it in this next episode now.
I'm sorry.
But also, and as he said, September is the best time to buy gear if you want the new gear. So, always keep track of those sales days. I would always say that. That's how I operate, man. You don't need the brightest, newest. You just need like the second or third newest.
Yeah.
But
Bottom
it's been a great
barrel.
podcast. Bottom of the barrel, guys. Out. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.